Hey everybody, welcome back to the We Are Pool Players podcast. I'm your co-host Greg Plester.
Here with Erik Hjorleifson.
And let's get into it. So Erik, we got a few really cool matches to cover, and then I think we'll probably dive into the Champions League now that that's over with. A lot of things up back in the Champions League, that's for sure. A lot of feedback on social media, a lot of things that you and I saw. So I think that'll be interesting to cover off the back end of this podcast. But I think right away, let's just jump right into the Justin and Fedor match. So, again, spoiler alert, I'm sure everybody knows. 100 to, I think it was 69 for Fedor. Fedor never loses Gorst. So I guess it kind of went the way everybody thought.
Nobody's eating their words. Convincing win, right? It's another convincing win in a long race, and where does he go from here, right? People are talking like maybe Dennis, maybe Shane, maybe some of the Asian players, but I think as far as North American players, that's going to be about it, right?
Well, and that's right. I was just going to say they said that on a few of the threads. They're like, dude, your action's dead. Who's left, right? And I don't think he cares, but it's just, when it's that convincing against, pretty dominant players. You're right. Who's left? Like in North America, who's left? Shane, I guess, right? Yeah. And then get on a plane, bud, because you gotta go fly into the action now, man. It came down to you'd sent me some stats about the break and run, and not to mention we saw it as well, and a lot of people talking about it. Even Justin piped in on it. He chirped in on one of the posts that the break and run percent was, what was it at, 40s?
Yeah, I think he was around 42. So considering the breaking rules, which was 9 on the spot, break from the box, using a magic rack, but obviously with the 9 on the spot and break from the box, but that is the toughest breaking rules you can get for 9-ball, and to be somewhere in the 40% range. I've seen players do it in so the main tournaments that they'll use those breaking rules in are the International Open and the Derby City Classic. And I've seen players border on that type of break and run percentage, but it's high for those type of breaking rules, right?
And for that long.
Right, no kidding.
Right? 3 days, you're just pumping out 40 percenters. His break, and Justin made a good point too on one of the replies. He said it's not even watchable, right? It's just, same 6 balls. Right. And you know what? We talk about big breakers, and I think it was last year, I think it was. I played Tyler. I think you were in the room. I think you and I played that tournament too. But when I played Tyler Steyer, and he just broke and ran the same balls. It broke on wing ball in on the one, run out. Broke wing ball in on the one, run out. I think he put a 4 and then a safety and then a 3. What are you doing with that? You're not even getting to the table, right? So, I'm going to throw this question out there, and I'd love to. I think we'd all like to hear a little bit of, your insight on it. But if we were able to snap our fingers and make this happen, would you get rid of the magic rack?
Well, I think if you do, then it just becomes a racking contest. And I think, all these alternative theories about the opponent racking for the opponent or the ref racking for the other player, well, yeah, it's going to make it less offensive, but, you're going to get punished by hitting a perfect break. What you have to understand is that, when you're using a magic rack like this, we're calling them big breakers, but it's not really a big break in 9-ball. It's a repeatable contact point on the break at a repeatable speed. And, usually when you're talking about breaking from the box or even breaking from the side rail with the 9 on the spot, you're talking about adding a little bit of spin on it, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's definitely something that you have to think about when you're seeing that high of a break and run percentage, but don't think it's easy to make the same things happen on the break all the time. I'm still a big advocate of 9-ball. And do I think it gets over offensive sometimes? Maybe. but I think you get rewarded for hitting a proper break. That's part of it too, right?
But okay, but let's try to take the player element out of it. Let's say from a viewer's perspective, a fan perspective, 10 ball has more moves, more safeties, more kicks, right? It's do you think from a viewership perspective, 10 ball isn't the game to be sponsored?
Maybe, but I think it's just like different forms of tennis or different forms of golf, right? So like 9 ball would be like playing on grass, and 10 ball would be like playing hardcore.
Sure.
And 8 ball would be like playing on clay or something. And then
Sure.
if you know anything about golf, you're talking about the difference between like a links course or like, I actually don't know a ton about golf, but I know all the courses aren't the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to me, it's just 9 ball is the most offensive of all the rotation games, but I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing offense,
No,
Sure.
and listen,
Yeah.
I agree, and I disagree. I agree because as a player, it's great to see, especially
Mhm.
people stringing racks together. But when it does come down to, pattern rack, wing ball in on the one, run out. When it's that over and over and over, and it's like the same 6 balls, right, to 7 balls you're running out. When does the viewer of that match just get bored? Like there's something there. I don't know what it is. I mean, like you said, is it rack for your opponent? Is it the ref? Like, once upon a time it was the Sardo rack and everybody smashed it. But is it the magic rack, 9 on the spot, break from the box? But even when you do that, all that's doing is buying you time until they master that. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, but on this subject, though, I'll tell you what Matchroom's doing. So, like in the U.S. Open, and I'm not sure what they're going to do in the World Pool Championship this year, but in the U.S. Open, that's the only tournament that they play with the 9 on the spot, and they use the magic rack on the outside tables at the last U.S. Open, but they did it on the TV table. But if you saw what they did in the Champions League pool and what they do in the World Pool Masters and the Mosconi Cup and pretty much every other tournament, they tap the balls in. So what it means is that it's not like a dead perfect rack. It's very good, and it's good enough that the corner ball goes in very often. So in other words, you'll get rewarded for hitting a good break. But if you watch how they broke this weekend at all week at the Champions League pool, they weren't playing a set break. Okay, like they were just hitting it square, and players were hitting it in different ways. Pretty much no one was cutting it because they didn't want to risk like not making the corner ball. The corner ball seemed to be going in from a certain breaking place on the table, and that's the break they chose to use. But I can't say that anyone was actually playing position on the one. Like tapping the balls like that is actually a bit of an art form. Like I don't actually know how to do it personally. I mean, what it is like you get the balls in a certain position where they're close to freezing, and you take you take another ball, I'm pretty sure, and you tap on the balls like in position, so they tend to rack similarly in that, falling into these little holes that are tapped into the cloth, right?
well,
So
wasn't that what the Sardo rack did?
pretty much, like
Yeah.
people don't realize the Sardo rack was actually a myth. You had to tap the balls in, and the rack would freeze the balls into those tapped positions, right?
Oh.
It wasn't actually the rack. It was that contraption helped theoretically help the balls get into those tapped holes. I guess what I'm getting at is if you want to talk about not seeing the same shot on the break all the time, it seems like Matchroom kind of has that figured out, right?
Good.
Other than that, you just tighten the pockets a little bit too, right?
Yeah.
Like this weekend it was on 4.5-inch or not this, like with Fedor and Justin, they played on 4.5-inch pockets. So for world class players, they're not going to miss too many shots on 4.5-inch pockets, right?
Yeah. You know what? I totally appreciate that. What you're saying. It's still ended up being a break and run contest, and it still gets to a point of unwatchable at times, right? I mean, you had touched on the Matchroom, and we had touched on as well was, those shorter races, right? Was 5 the magic number, 7? What if Fedor and Bergman played, again, 20 matches race to 5 or best of whatever, right? Like, would that, alternate break, or I don't know. So let's Chip beat Tony. They played a 1-pocket match. What is this, like the 18th time they've played?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
It's been at least 3 or 4 minimum, yeah.
So Tony was giving up a ball, right? Was it 9-8, right? And I think Chip finished, I think it was 6 or 7 games ahead?
Yeah, final score was 27-22.
Yeah. So five games ahead. I believe Chip beat him last time they played and got a ball as well.
That's right.
So why did they not play even? I don't. That's just how the game got made, I guess. I don't.
Yeah, I don't know how close it was last time. I think on paper Tony can still win with 1 ball, but I don't think you'll see that game again. And in fact, I've heard that they're going to play New Orleans this time. They played close to Oklahoma this last time, which is relatively close to New Orleans too. But it's coming to the point where Chip's going to have to give in and not take any more spots and kind of go to Tony's homeroom, like that type of stuff, right? Because he's up a fair bit of money now. I think this last one was for $50,000. The one before that was for a good amount. What I did see some posts about they're going to keep playing. If Chip wins this one, he's going to take the number 1 seed as the top American 1-pocket player.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, good for him. He beat Frost too as well, right? Like people were kind of like when he beat Frost, like that was an upset. But that seems like nothing now after beating Tony 3 or 4 times.
Well, doesn't Chip have to play Alex first?
He'll just keep going with Tony until Tony quits. Like Alex is Tony, right?
No, I mean, to kind of, be on the top of that mountain. Doesn't he have to kind of?
I'm talking about American-born 1-pocket players.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, for sure. I would agree. Well, looking forward to the rematch for Chip and Tony, and love to see how this game goes even. I love watching 1-pocket. I mean, it's definitely one of those games you got to play to kind of enjoy because it's a little tricky. And I mean, that's where going back, not to double back too far, but when we talk about viewership on 10 ball or 9 ball, or 1-pocket, even if 10 ball is more enjoyable to watch because there's kicks and banks and this and safeties and a little bit more strategy involved and not quite as offensive, but then we have to reset and get the general population into 10 ball. It's like you got to start all over again, right? So, I mean, that's not going to happen anytime soon. The other recap we had was the Tour Championship. Just a quick snooker add in here. So Neil Robinson and Ronnie O'Sullivan, Mr. fairly consistent Ronnie O'Sullivan, makes it to the finals after a amazing comeback on Barry Hawkins and wins Hill to get to the final. And Neil beat him 10-4. And if anybody, any snooker enthusiasts out there, watch this, Neil played like he was practicing. Like he just didn't miss. He ran so many centuries, and Ronnie couldn't do anything. He couldn't do anything. It literally looked like Neil was just banging the balls around. Didn't care he was in the finals of the Tour Championship. Didn't care that he was playing Ronnie O'Sullivan at all. Didn't care that he didn't cut his hair. I had to say something about his hair. It's amazing.
That, yeah.
It's amazing. But so a little bit of a recap for the snooker fans there. So now that we're about halfway through the podcast, let's get into the Predator Champions League because, like we'd said at the beginning of this, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of feedback online, a lot of positive, lots of negative. You have to hope that Matchroom, is online, is looking it up, is, listening to the fan base. So Albin wins. I mean, the guy's a phenomenal player. He deserves to win. He also won the most money because he won money every day. Like he was in there every day. I think he won day 6?
It took him 6 days to get through. And he made at least one final besides that, maybe even 2. And like he was in the semifinals at least 3 times or 4.
Like he went into the finals at like 12 grand.
Was it that high? Yeah.
Something like that.
It's probably, it was probably close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he ends up winning around 20,000, which is, I mean, that's a decent payday. Even if you look at who got second place and third place, at the end of the day, kind of who really won. I mean, Niels won a lot of money. There was some players in there that just kept chipping in, kept plugging away at it, and they ended up, accumulating a lot of little paychecks throughout the week. We've touched on that, and obviously the answer to that is more money in the final for next year's event. Matchroom knows that, absolutely, and there was definitely some surprise exits along the way, right? Darren Appleton in and out.
Ralph was out on the second day.
Yeah. Ralph was out. Chris Robson first day did it out. Gomez, right? Gomez didn't make it. What do you think of Billy's performance?
Thought it was okay. He was complaining a little bit about jet lag. I mean, he's probably only been overseas like 5 times at the most.
Yeah.
Never mind like not having traveled internationally in over a year. Like, how many players actually traveled internationally for the tournament? Oi came from Japan. Roberto came from the U.S. Billy came from the U.S. The rest of
there's
them
only a few.
The rest of them were on like 2 to 5 hour flights at most. There was some
They walked to the venue.
Sure. Yeah. He was complaining about not feeling 100% after the plane. Did he make a final? I don't believe he did. He made the semifinals a couple times.
Yeah. And he still went home with money. It's too bad he didn't get into the final. Gomez, it kind of gets into a little bit of the feedback that we're seeing online. Is one of the big ones was the reffing. Gomez, I don't know if everybody saw if you haven't seen it, look it up, the foul that was called on Gomez.
Yeah, I saw it. It was clearly a good shot.
It was clearly a good shot. But it was a foul, and then, maybe there needs to be some sort of video replay or, something.
That's the answer.
Yeah, right. And then you saw the 9 ball on the
I did.
And you know what? We'll say, hey, they're a different set of balls. Maybe missed it. Kelly Fisher missed it, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It's a different colored 9, so maybe that's why. But that's pretty entertaining. That the 9 was on the side of the pack, or side of the stack rather than the middle. What were your thoughts on how it went?
I watched a lot of it. Can I say that I would watch that much of the U.S. Open? Going on even though the U.S. Open is a bigger tournament, I might not watch as many matches. Like, if they're like in the round of 64, would I be watching just to, see who wins the round of 64? I'd be paying attention, but I don't know if I'd be sitting down and watching just as much. So I think every day there was excitement. Every day there was a winner. Every day there was stuff about, well, who could go home? You could see who was going to be in the top 4. Or likely who was going to be in the top 4. But then you were kind of thinking about, like, near the end, once they got 5 matches done, or once they got about 4 matches done, you were thinking about, well, like, if you had a player to win the tournament, were you worried that he'd still be in? Like, would he not make the next day type of thing, right? I don't know if you noticed what happened on the last day. It was kind of climactic, actually. Like, Albin had to win his last match, and he only beat Oi by 1 rack to advance to the semifinals. And he was down 4-2 in his last match. And he came back and won 5-4. And he made the top 4 by 1 game. And he ended up winning the tournament, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, stuff like that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, and I agree, that it was a lot of pool. I like the format. It was fun to kind of follow the players, follow the drama, at the last few games. And cheer for your player, and there's a lot of little sweat bets going on all over social media, and it was fun. I mean, you scroll on any social media and a match popped up. There was a lot of pool, and I agree. And race to 5, I mean, who doesn't have a few minutes to watch that, right? It was really good. I thought the format was really good. How and the races and the shot clock, I thought it was very entertaining. For sure, and I agree. Some of the feedback that we've seen online was a lot of people didn't understand the format. And, I mean, we had the podcast a few weeks ago that basically tried to decipher and figure it out. It is tricky to follow, but once you really get into it, you can figure it out.
Sorry, I think the premise of the format isn't that tough, but it's more just on like the whys. Like, why do some players have less chances than other players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think going forward, kind of the answer to that is going to be that they're going to seed the top 7 players based on Matchroom points. So the top 7 in Matchroom points throughout the year will be in that first group.
Yeah.
And then basically all you need to know from there is the winner goes to the final group, the loser doesn't continue on, and 2 players come in each day, right?
Yeah.
And I think they kind of did this time. I feel like a lot of the good players started in the first group, but it was probably a little arbitrary. Like Kazakis came in late; he only had a couple chances, stuff like that, right?
It'll be really interesting next year. Hopefully, see more players, like see more diversity of the players, seeing the Taipei, seeing Philippines, seeing more U.S. players, seeing what that looks like. They may need to expand it. I'll be surprised. Group 1, day 1, Group 2, day 2. I'll be surprised if they don't maybe put that in there a little bit, because it's not quite as confusing when you do day 1, day 2, day 3, rather than Group 1, Group 2. It's just not as confusing. That's what I found anyway. And the other thing was the stream. I mean, it kept breaking. Apparently, there's a boatload of commercials. Matchroom has a lot to take away from this. Definitely some wins for sure that are worth celebrating, and certainly some opportunities to reflect on, and hopefully they can, kind of correct it and go in a different direction in certain aspects of it to make it, even more of a premium event. Even up to commentating. There's feedback that commentating wasn't, where's Jimmy? Where's Jimmy? Where's the voice of pool, right? Like, where's Jimmy White? I hope that, they see the people online, they see what the fans are saying, and that they course correct for the next year. But overall, I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, after you kind of figured out how it worked, it was really entertaining. It was really quick. And congratulations to Albin.
The commentators I enjoyed the most were Niels Fayen and Billy Thorpe, actually. Are
you going to try to play in it next year?
Well, yeah. Well, they need someone from Canada in there, right?
Let's go. Let's go.
So, yeah, it was nice to see Matchroom throwing their hat back in the ring and getting Pro Pool back on the airwaves. And they're going to do the World Pool Masters and the World Cup of Pool in May. So we'll be looking forward to that. They're taking April off. Looks like there's going to be some action matches in April. Dennis is playing Skylar on the bar table race to 100. That's going to be a classic match. I'm sure some other things will pop up in April. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that happened this week.
I feel like we're the We Are Pool Players / Matchroom Pool podcast. But you know what? Until we start getting some more tournaments, get people outside of their houses, it's a lot about Matchroom right now, right? There's no Derby, there's no Joss Tour, there's not a lot of other things happening. So, hey, quick shout out to everybody, all the subscribers and people leaving the reviews. Thank you. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button so you get the notifications when we drop another podcast. And give us those ratings. We get into more ears. Again, thanks for the support. Give us a like. And I'm Greg Plester, and I'm out.
Okay, guys, Erik Hjorleifson here. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. Erik Hjorleifson. See you next week.
Do you want to do yours again?
Sure.